All right, everybody, welcome to the Scho-Zone. It is your host, Ryan Schofield, coming at you live from my studio here. Yeah, nice new background and everything. And I am a very, very confused and conflicted baseball fan. Not exactly the story or the subject matter I want to be thinking about or discussing a week before the full season starts, I guess, what have you. Um, I'm doing this on Saturday morning. So we've had a couple days since the Shohei Ohtani news has broken. He's involved in a gambling scandal. We know very, very little still is the best way I would go. That does not mean that people do not have very, very strong opinions on this subject. I happen to have some very strong opinions. Not necessarily on this subject, but it just is very, very funny and convenient to me, I guess, that last week at this time, I was doing a very, very deep dive in revisiting the entire Pete Rose story. So I have all of what happened and what transpired back in 1989 very, very fresh in my head because we have this lovely ability now with modern technology that you can actually put yourself back in a moment. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I live some glamorously exciting life anymore, any or lifestyle any at all or anymore. I spent a couple hours one day while I was reading the 225-page Dowd report, watching original news footage from Cincinnati back when this whole story was breaking, when Jerry Springer was the anchor of one of the news stations in Cincinnati. So had all of that in there. Where do we begin here? I guess so. I was watching the season opener, and I was ignoring my phone that day. And then it's kind of when randomly you'll see that things are trending and you'll see Ohtani. Okay, well, it's not uncommon for on the day of a baseball game for a guy who signed a $700 million contract to be trending on there. But then you start seeing this whole thing about the gambling on there. So here is what we know, which is very, very, very little so far. Apparently, there was a illegal bookmaking operation in California, which was raided sometime, like I believe last October. And throughout that raid, there was some information that was revealed that Shohei Ohtani's name was connected to there. What the story was that he's interpreter, Ipe Mazahara, I believe is how you say his name. He met with ESPN and did a 90-minute interview in which he basically said, I'm the worst gambler ever, and I never, never won, and I'm never going to do it again. And that Shohei bailed him out of his gambling debt, but did not give him the money to pay the bookie himself. Did not trust him with the money because he feared he would gamble it. So Shohei directly paid the bookie for him. That would check out to me. I know that if somebody I knew was in a gambling debt and they asked for money, the last thing I would do is give them any money. I would pay something for them. I would never want to give a gambling addict any money because a gambling addict, I'm close into the world and I know how these people think. I know how they operate, and in their head, they can go to the roulette table. They can throw it all down on red. They'll then get the money to pay back the bookie, and then they'll also have this stack of money to pay back their other guy, or they keep it for themselves so they can continue to fuel their gambling lifestyle. Whatever may have happened there. After this interview was conducted, uh, Mazahara goes back to the hotel with Ohtani and his people, and immediately Ohtani's camp is going, we disavow everything he just said. Okay, well, what changed in there? Then all of a sudden, this turned into it being a case of a theft. All right, so I do understand where people are coming across on this, of that they think that this looks very, very, very sketchy. And yes, it does not look forthright, obviously, when something has changed the story so quickly. But I think that people have their tendency for their heads to go to the worst possible place. And what the reason for that is, there's a couple of variables at play with Shohei Ohtani. Um, is it because he is the $700 million man? We have to even ask the question, is it because he is not white? All right. I hate I'm the last person to want to do this, but it is a valid conversation, I feel like, because, well, I'm the idiot that's reading through the comments on social media. And there is a case to be made about that. I also think it happens to be a thing of that if you notice the fan bases of teams that seem to be the most vocal about Shohei Ohtani, they're not the Dodgers. A lot of East Coast teams that are very, very good. One of them in particular is the Yankees. And I've always noticed from the time I live in upstate New York, so I live in Yankee country. I have noticed since Shohei Ohtani arrived onto the scene, there has been a huge resentment that the name Babe Ruth was ever used in a sentence with him. And, well, he's pretty good. Might be even, I'm just going to leave it at that. So it appears that there is a lot of people that have taken the limited information that I've given you that we know to be true on this and have now jumped fully into this whole conversation that this obviously means that not only was Shohei Ohtani gambling himself and this guy was putting the bets in for him, but he was obviously betting on baseball. And I have now seen people who are starting to go through the score game summaries of bad games that Shohei Ohtani has played, insisting that he was on the take of this one, which to me does not make a lot of sense. Because if you were $4.5 million deep in the hole, I don't think you would get that way if you were fixing your own games. Also, let's go now into some talking points worth discussing on here, and I'll offer what I believe to be answers. Ultimately, I'm sitting here right now on Saturday, March 23rd. Nothing I know is true. I'm not making any definitive statements. I just at least want to offer my reasons why I don't think anybody else knows anything. So, one point of concern is that for Ohtani is if you're somebody who I don't want this to be true. Okay. So I might be biased in this one, and that I really, really, really am hoping to God that this is not true. And we can discuss that conversation in a little bit. I don't want this to be true. So yeah, there is the concern of that, this interpreter, he makes $300,000 a year, and he's got a $4.5 million line of credit. Um, that's most people say, how would that possibly happen? I mean, I'll tell you right now. I mean, I've been no, I'm not prude to the scene of illegal gambling. Okay, I've had lines of credits that I would think would probably be a bit excessive. I had a period of time where I was making like $400 a week, but I had a $2,500 a week line of credit. So, the bookies don't exactly do a formal credit check. They don't ask you to produce a pay stub or anything. So there is that one going with it. This guy potentially could have lied to these people about how much he is making. I'm sure, anyone with this idea that nobody knows who he is, I am pretty sure that if Shohei Ohtani, this is all a Southern California thing. Shohei Ohtani being one of the most prominent sports figures in Southern California, if not the world. And in every interview, there's this one guy next to him. I can see how somebody could see the close proximity to him. I don't think that anyone went to Google up his salary on there. If anything, I would think that a bookie would see the proximity to the rich guy and be willing to allow some things. I don't think that's actually, I don't know if necessarily a bookie would want to take the action, and I'm not gonna, this is just speculatory. I don't know if I would want to take action from somebody so high profile, because you have the tendency, things can go wrong. I just will say that if you were to Google Rochester, New York, Thomas Vanek gambling, I may know some things about that case. We'll just leave it at that. I think the statute of limitations have passed, but that is not looking good for Shohei that he's in there. But I think that there could be an explanation for that. It is a weird thing now. The reason I'm so well versed on this whole gambling conversation is that last week there was a Sammy Sosa interview where he had the opportunity. He was asked if he took steroids. He denied it. It got me thinking about Pete Rose when he was interviewed by Jim Gray and he refused to admit that he bet on baseball, only to a couple of years later admit that he bet on baseball, but not doing it just out of the kindness of his heart. He had to write a book and release it when one of his peers or when Paul Molitor was being inducted to the Hall of Fame. But I digress on Mr. Rose. So, okay, I kind of lost this one there where I was going. Okay, so with these line of creditors against there, it is, I will say that Ohtani, I want to believe, is this, he's presented as this mythical figure, and I want to believe it to be true, but we also, there's an awful lot we do not know about the guy. Now, I don't think it's sketchy that we did not, that he kept who his wife was as a secret. I think that as I've noticed this one because I pay attention in the NBA with Nikola Jokic. I don't believe that foreign players really like having to live in America or play in America, or I think that they want to keep their life away from America as much as possible. I think they just want to come here, play their sports, collect their checks, and go about their lives. Um, I don't think that, yeah, I can understand somebody not wanting to have their wife be a spectacle in the American shit show that we have going on here. I also now looked at some quotes today where Shohei Ohtani report, there's some teammates that have said he barely follows any other sports. This would lead the person that wants the worst to believe that this obviously means he was betting on baseball. Whereas other people were saying, well, his wife's a basketball player. He's at all these other sporting events. Just because he's there doesn't mean he knows what the fuck is going on. I mean, the other thing too is that, like we have this whole idea of, you wouldn't pay this money for a friend or ever. We don't really know the extent of Shohei Ohtani's relationship to this gentleman. I mean, they are, aside from being an interpreter, they also are lifelong friends. We don't know how far back they go or what's happened along the way of their journey. Also, I think that there's a cultural thing right here where it's that, I don't know if that, I know that Japanese, I do know that they have a high discipline structure. There's a lot of pride in family name. These are limited things I know about their culture, but they may be incredibly loyal to one another. Something that we can't understand as Americans. Just because I wouldn't do this for my friend, it doesn't make any sense to me. Well, there's a lot of things in this side of the globe that don't make a lot of sense to the rest of the world. So let's just leave this one out there. I really, really actually meant, and it's would have been funny to see how this would have worked out. When the MLB season opened up on Wednesday, I actually thought about recording my episode because I recently kind of developed my new theory of that because of legalized gambling in sports, it's actually more important that Pete Rose is kept out of the Hall of Fame versus people saying that now that legalized gambling is a thing, that Pete Rose now should be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Let me explain this to everybody since I have gone back to this one. I don't think anyone quite knows how it wasn't as simple as Pete Rose was just betting on baseball. There was 225 pages of reports or 225 pages in the Dowd reports, which was just kind of the summary of 2,000 pages worth of evidence, which it's amazing when I watch back all of these interviews, about 10 years of footage of Pete Rose denying everything that was in the Dowd report. I mean, he was his story was that he got kicked out of baseball for gambling on Monday Night Football. Now, when you look into his story, what is more fascinating is that I think that MLB did him some favors and just only kept it a little bit under the scope of gambling. So how this works is that Pete Rose, who is a player and a manager, or the dates are a mix, but there was a part of time he was a player manager, but then he actually was a manager when they really had the most evidence on him, was that he was hanging out at a Gold's Gym in the Cincinnati area. All right, he was hanging. But by the way, this is a great one to discuss as far as that, the great Pete Rose and his legacy is he was hanging out at a Gold's Gym that was full of guys that were dealing steroids and cocaine. Okay. There was a manager of a Major League Baseball team that was really, really good friends with steroids dealers. And that's kind of like the least of the concerns of what was going on with Mr. Rose at the time. But he's hanging out with these guys, and he makes friends. He's got two guys that he's working with that he has placing bets for him and running bets, and this whole little elaborate scheme there. They have mountains of pages of phone records of that this guy would be in the Cincinnati Reds clubhouse making phone calls to his bookie 20 minutes before the start of the game. Like, I mean, literally the guy sitting there with a lineup card in his hand calling in bets. So one of the things with Pete Rose is that, hey, well, he never bet on the Reds. Yes, he did. That was revealed into these, the betting sheets, which is amazing of what a terrible liar Pete Rose is that you can't even believe anything he said right now. You can read this in the Dowd report, okay? So they have a ticket, they have an actual bet slip that a FBI signature or handwriting analyst has deemed as Pete Rose's handwriting. And Pete Rose is insisting he's never seen that. He denied. So they actually have him do a handwriting. He said that Pete Rose said it wasn't even his handwriting. So they have Pete Rose actually write out some things. And what he does is he does it in like these big oversized letters, not realizing that actually makes the signature or the handwriting analyst's job easier. And it was a spot on match. Pete Rose also had some really bad credibility issues as far as he was winning at the track. He won some really big bets at the track, was trying to say he was not even at the track on those days, then was being shown cashed checks signed by him from those days at the track. And just he just really seems that even when he could be shown a video of him doing something and would still argue that it didn't happen, is the way I strike Mr. Rose on that. But the idea, I would say, well, he only ever bet on the Reds. He believed in his team. That is true. Apparently, his standard wager was $2,000 a game on the Reds, but there wasn't that he bet on the Reds all of the time. In fact, there was one glaring piece of information I found that through a stretch in 1988, I believe this was in 88, he would bet the Reds every day, but except for when a certain pitcher named Mario Soto was pitching. So was the reason behind that he didn't have any faith in Mario Soto? Did he know that he had done everything he can in those games leading up to there to secure victories in those games that he just didn't care? We don't know, but this is what is the grand why people have the issues with Pete Rose. As far as that argument does not hold any weight to me. And my story with Pete Rose goes back to, I was 4 or 5 years old when this stuff kind of breaks. You're not really totally forming memories as a kid just yet there, but I do remember, I unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, do share a lot of the stemming of my thoughts come from what my father did, because I thought my father was a smart guy, and he's how I got my love of this game. I remember being younger, and there was just, when you saw Pete Rose's name pop up on the TV or you saw the clips of him, you just kind of knew that there was a dark cloud over it. And I remember asking my dad, what did he do? And my dad just simply answered bad things. That's all he said. When I got to be older and asked more about, the whole situation, I asked what the big deal was about the whole betting on baseball thing. And my dad gave me the whole, he compromised the integrity of the game, and he thought he was bigger than baseball. So that was kind of, I started going with that. Then I did my studying on, I really, really hate that most people's exposure to the 1919 White Sox is the movie 8 Men Out, because I don't think it's the most factual. It's tough for me to know what actually happened in 1919, but I seem to have read enough of people that seem to have enough of knowing that it went down exactly the way. Shoeless Joe Jackson maybe is not as innocent as everybody thinks he is, but really try putting yourself back into that time and space. Baseball was the biggest thing going, as far as it was only in a couple cities, but the whole country watched it and paid attention, or not watched it, but they cared about it and they paid attention to it. And the idea it was not a well-kept secret that World Series was on the up and up, okay? Apparently, there's people that say that the Reds get a short end of the stick of that one, of that they were still a good team too. it did not look really close as a handicapper or as a guy who bets on sports here and there. And the idea that the Reds, by the time that World Series started, were actually favorites over the White Sox was ridiculous. That's how well known it was that this World Series was fixed. But people's attitudes at that time was, why will I pay attention to this game if this is what's going on? Baseball had to work very, very hard to earn their credibility back with the American people. I kind of remember this being as a kid when I was watching the WWF. And then as soon as I found out for sure that it wasn't real, it just kind of lost a little bit of its cachet to me. But people have always wanted to know that the games are legitimate. Fair comparison. So when I was saying that Pete Rose, this whole thing should be kept that it was banned, is that what do you see right now across social media? I mean, I really, really almost need to delete that stuff. But unfortunately, if I'm going to do this type of stuff, I do need to have it to kind of promote the 25 people that'll watch this video. But in other sports, everything we're always looking at, because somebody lost their same game parlay, everything is always on the up and up. The fact that baseball still keeps one of, and I still will consider Pete Rose one of the best players of all time, the fact that we keep him out of the Hall of Fame as this cautionary tale to everybody about what happens if you break this rule, I feel like it gives the sport legitimacy in a time where everyone questions the legitimacy of everything. It's, Calvin Ridley got a year, okay, for in the NFL, and he's back playing, but people went through, there was people looking through his game summaries to try and figure out if he fixed anything. The fact of the matter that everybody, if you watch NFL and NBA all year, they're just going to say fixed, 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 fixed. And I would say that there's a little bit of a decline. I don't buy that these leagues are as popular as they ever have been. And if they are more popular than they ever have been, it's because of the gambling. But keeping Pete Rose up there, and he doesn't belong in for me. I don't understand. I'm not trying to turn this into that conversation, but I just do not understand somebody being able to lie for that long and then, after all options have been exhausted, then tell the truth and expect to get the same result, which that's another thing right now too, is there's the double standard conversation of that, okay, the options are, before, again, without people knowing fucking anything, is that the options are Pete Rose needs to now be in the Hall of Fame, or Shohei Ohtani now needs to be banned from baseball for life like Pete Rose. I don't have the answer to either of those. Okay, put it this way. I don't believe that this is what puts Pete Rose back in the Hall of Fame, or not back, but puts him in the Hall of Fame. There are some stark differences, and let me go through those for you. Pete Rose could be in the Hall of Fame. It's his own fault, not even just from the gambling standpoint, but from the way that he handled it, okay? People are very, very forgiving. We understand that others are going to make mistakes. It's, I believe, and this is at least how I operate, it's just usually how people take those mistakes and how they handle making them. I can forgive someone that does something wrong. What I cannot forgive is a liar. And even multiple, I mean, it has to be bad lying. But Pete Rose, it was pretty, I mean, you can't have 2,000 pages of evidence against you and say that none of it's true. I just don't know. I wish I could walk around with that skin. But the way that it worked, I mean, baseball took no pleasure in any of this. They really was a bad mark on it. But, Pete Rose was bringing this upon himself with the people he was bringing to the ballpark, or he was being seen around. When you're seen around a bunch of sketchy characters, and then this pops up, and then they didn't have to investigate him hard. This wasn't like a deep dive. We may have to go a little deeper on Shoei to find things, and who knows, because, got an international foreign thing going on here. But the way that it's understood to me, and I'm just going based on what Johnny Bench said, is had Pete Rose at first admitted he had bet on baseball, there would have been a suspension. He would have had to have undergone some type of a gambling treatment. And then he would have kind of served baseball's version of community service, where he would have gone around to every minor league city, talking with, young ones about the dangers of gambling and telling all his story. he would have been able to earn himself back into the good grace of baseball and would probably be managing a team and or in the Hall of Fame at some point had he done that. Pride cometh before the fall. He did not want to admit he thought he was bigger than the game, and he fought this under the pretenses that he was under the impression, and that the best thing, you can't believe anything that Pete Rose says, but Pete Rose wants to claim that he was under the impression that Bart Giamatti would have eventually reinstated him after signing the agreement that he had signed. His whole thing was that he signed that there was no terms of any finding any bet on baseball, even though Bart Giamatti in his press conference says when he didn't have to, said, I believe the evidence is clear that he bet on baseball. Bart Giamatti died a couple days after that whole thing went down, which Pete Rose says that, oh, if I had known he was going to die, I would have maybe done things differently. Quick side tangent on that one. I don't know if people just really didn't care about people's health back in that period of time, but when you look at the press conference of Bart Giamatti, it's not the most shocking. I don't know if maybe the lighting or the camera work that day was a little spotty, but the coloring of his face, it didn't look very natural to me, I'll just say. But Pete Rose lies, and then loses his chance in there. But anyways, Johnny Bench, his teammates, and these guys seem like that they're friends with Pete Rose. It seems like that they would be at the Hall of Fame doing their thing, and then afterwards still grab dinner with Pete Rose. But very, very simple. It's great with those old timers in baseball because a lot of them weren't very formally educated. So when they break down their arguments, sometimes it almost sounds like they're talking smart, but it's really just their way of how they make things understanding. But Johnny Bench just flat out said he was just like, go home, and he's like, if anyone thinks that he should be in the Hall of Fame, he's like, go home today and tell your kids that there are no rules anymore. And he was like, and that's where I come across on that. To the point that Johnny Bench, now this is the other thing too. Baseball Hall of Fame, it's for the members, it's a fraternity. Me as a fan, I have no bearing on what's happening there. I'm just happy with what the fraternity gives me, I guess, is what I would do. I don't know the year of this, but I'm just citing a Johnny Bench interview. Johnny Bench, when asked if he should be in the Hall of Fame, he said no. And he said that him and all of the members at the time got together and they had a unanimous vote that if Pete Rose was ever inducted into the Hall of Fame, they would not show up. They would not support it. So these are the members of that fraternity that do not want him in. Other people do want him in. So again, I just look at this as that it's almost baseball's biblical story, because going back on this further, I mean, I watched even the clip of Pete Rose when he broke the record. And I mean, Pete Rose grew up 3 miles away from Cincinnati Stadium, the Crossley Field. I can't think of a man who was more on top of the world than Pete Rose at the moment when he made that hit, or how he owned the city of Cincinnati. I mean, I don't think any athlete has probably had, I mean, this is a valid question to ask. Has any athlete ever been bigger to a city than Pete Rose was to Cincinnati? World by the balls. And who knows if at that exact moment all of this shit was going. I mean, for all we know, he was betting back then. Let's not even get into the corked bat situation. Let's not get into that one because, no, actually, we'll get into it. I watched the interview with Pete Rose on Vlad TV. I was kind of completely forgot about this one, but my big thing about liars is that you can usually tell with how vehement they are in their denial or how they react to it. And there was a tense moment in that interview where Pete Rose was asked about a corked bat of his that he used in the game opener of the 1985 season, which was the year that he broke that record. Apparently years later, it's first sale on Sotheby's, and looking at the price of the stuff that they sell, I think it's kind of legitimate. But it was a opening day bat that was signed by Pete Rose that later somebody went and discovered that it was corked, which is hilarious because Pete Rose was saying that he doesn't know how anybody got a game used bat of his. Even alleges, this is my favorite, he says, I don't remember ever in almost 16,000 major league at bats ever breaking a bat. Then says, I don't think it, it does say that it happened. I'm sorry. That's just, I think is probably pretty impossible to have 16,000 major league at bats and never once break a bat. But He says he only ever gave out one game used bat, and that was in 1962. Well, Pete, your signature's on this bat. You were aware that it left your possession at some point? No. Anyways, that was found to be corked, but we're not here to spread too much more shit about Pete Rose. But those are some facts we have going with Mr. Rose there. And yeah, so I was saying that for a while that, I don't think people know his story well enough or the implications it has. And should be told, I think that Pete Rose has been forgiven as much as possible. That the Hall of Fame, I think that that's just kind of it was never gonna happen. But when you think about this, I mean, considering what that punish what the crime he committed to baseball is, the fact that he is still referred to as one of the best players of all time, and the fact that people even he was still allowed on MLB Network. He still has to ask for special permissions, but has been allowed for some major moments in sports. He still is. I mean, he was working for MLB Network for a while. He's been pretty forgiven. I mean, I would think that's, considering the stain on him, you would think that he would just be kind of exiled. Like, put it this way, nobody's talked to Albert Bell in a long time, okay? But yeah, and I mean, and for all of this to break on the weekend of March Madness, it's just it's just wild stuff. But we're very new into this, and I kind of want this, not a doubt a lot of people are going to see this one, but I guess I kind of want this as a time capsule for myself to see what my thoughts were when all of this went down. What I believe happened is I believe that Ohtani, and this is the closest I'll do to make a statement on anything. Again, this is what, if you gun to my head, ask me to put a bet down on this one, I would say Ohtani paid for his friends, covered his gambling debts, did not trust his friend. Then maybe there was, no, I mean, this is why it's dangerous to do, but I'm believing that at some point Ohtani realized that even him admitting to paying the bookie was a problem and that the lawyers on his side got involved. And that's why they're retracting this statement. It's not because he is guilty. It's because they're realizing, oh shit, he has admitted to some crimes. So he has admitted to a crime. I mean, this is more of a legal issue, I believe, than it is a baseball issue. But what I would say, actually, where I started this one off, is that Shohei Ohtani could come out today and say, look, I did fuck up. I bet on baseball. I bet on the whatever it may be. Based on the original case of Pete Rose, there is a precedent set that he would not be banned from baseball. I think people need to get this through their heads, is that if he was forthright, honest, and complied with the terms that MLB put forth, he'd probably be suspended for a while, maybe a year or two, and then be reinstated. Pete Rose, and this is more of my big thing, is that I have a lot probably in common with Pete Rose, is the idea of that we're redheads, probably borderline narcissistic, both of us. Well, he definitely, me, time will tell with that one. And, I like to gamble, so where, how do I judge this man so much when I'm, pretty similar to him, I guess is what I would say. I'm not a liar. That's for starters. There's some bad stuff in that report as far as that he was screwing over regular people. He was sociopath, manipulating people, and then he was going to leave some regular Joe high and dry with all of his gambling debt. I still don't think that's actually what I meant to talk about with that. I have so many thoughts on a lot of this stuff. I've been consumed with it for quite a while. But oh yeah, that's what it was. Rose, I've always said of that, he's just never showed any remorse for what he did. It's kind of, I mean, the big thing of that, I've watched 10 years of interviews of him lying, definitive, making up and really, really believing his lies. I think his, disease, I think lying is a disease to some people, and he's got it. But baseball they've tried to give him chances to get back in the game. And apparently he's always seen at a horse track or a casino. He just can't get away from it. I mean, he's said himself in an interview, he He tried to go to a treatment at University of Cincinnati for gambling, and he said he quit. And they asked him why he quit. He said, because I didn't understand what they were saying. Which I will say, it's amazing how his brain can work very, very, very well in remembering certain things to insane details, and then other times it just doesn't work. But he does have a problem, and he's done nothing to rectify it. I'm a pretty forgiving person as someone who's had some problems of my own over the years. I can understand. I was a fucking alcoholic for God very long time. I'm sure that they've done some stuff that bothered some people over that time. I can only ask for their forgiveness, but if they don't, that's on me. I'm the one that fucked up. Um, yeah. The whole it's just going to be a compelling saga going on here, and that we don't even know. There's a chance. I mean, we're on Saturday right now. There's a chance MLB just, by the way, that's actually my favorite part, is that everyone was now saying this is going to be a cover up. I mean, people really want this to be the worst case scenario. And this is a potential black eye for baseball, as far as I don't know if baseball can really slip any less anymore in popularity. Where I think that this is kind of kills baseball is that Ohtani was a chance to expand or try to maybe get back in some, more households in America. I don't think it's going to hurt necessarily as much, but it does help because it's going to limit growth. But for all we know, in the next 5 days, oh yeah, that was what I was getting at. Everyone was saying, oh, MLB is not even investigating this. For starters, this is also being investigated by the FBI. If anyone thinks that the MLB is going to do a more comprehensive investigation than the FBI, that just would say terrible things about the state of the of our confidence in the services of this country. I guess I would say, if our Major League Baseball has better resources than our federal government does. But well, anyways, so yeah, no, I'm losing this here. I kept this one going pretty good for the most proud of anything I've recorded for a while, probably because I didn't take a bong hit before I did this. And maybe we'll get, these amount of people see this. I stopped recording because I felt like I was putting shit out there. And if I'm putting shit out there, I'm going to get shit results. I did have one of my more popular episodes, our True Detective episode. But yeah, I'm going to try and get my conclusion thought, and then this will be all good to go. So yeah, no. Oh yeah, but yeah, so Ohtani, MLB is now investigating. They announced this, people from going on, they were saying the fact that MLB isn't investigating this is very, very shady. Yeah, MLB was investigating it since the word go. They just now, I'm sure that they have some channels to jump through, or people maybe were on vacation up before the season started, but they now have their investigation going. For all we know, they might, I mean, as a Cardinals fan, they're going to need all the fucking help they can get this year. It would be great if they said, hey, we're going to ask that Shohei Ohtani takes an indefinite leave of absence while we sort all this out. Who knows what can happen? We are in everyone needs to know minute by minute basis. And that's one of the other things too, was watching how news moved in 1989 with Pete Rose. I think that, we could find out that he is suspended by Thursday. I think that there was no chance they were ever going to have him sit in a foreign country. But I will say that for somebody with all of this going on, Shohei is one cool cat. I mean, if this was going on in the background here, I wear my expression on my sleeve, and we don't know, again, with the shots between Shohei and his interpreter in the dugout, what they knew between each other. But the ending conclusion I'm going to have of this is that we do not know any of these athletes regardless, but we are going to find out of this that Shohei Ohtani is even one of the best or better guys than we thought he was, by the fact that he was going to pay off his buddy's $4.5 million gambling debts, or we are going to find out that we have been duped. I've seen some interesting theories as to maybe the Dodgers saw this coming down the pike, and that's why they deferred the contract. I've seen people also speculate that maybe Shohei Ohtani knew he had a gambling problem, and that's why he deferred his money. We do not know, but if anything is true involving him baseball, this is what I will say. If I am made a fool of, even though I do not think I'd be made a fool because I'm waiting to see the news, but I will say, if news comes out that Shohei Ohtani was involved in any gambling on baseball, I will be saying throw him to the fire with Pete Rose. I do not say that just because this guy is guilty, that means that the other one is less guilty. If he is found of betting on baseball, he's done. That's plain and simple. That will be my statement. My bet would be that that is not the case. Now, again, everyone is head in the worst place, regardless of what is revealed. Everyone's going to assume that it's all a lie and it's all a cover up. And that's where we are in 2024. So stay tuned, folks. As things kind of get going, I will be now more active. Listen, I don't want to host a show just to host a show. I'm not a hot take guy, so you're never really going to notice that way. I would like to be on here that as I told my buddy the other day, I live a very, very boring life. I wake up, I go to the gym, I go to work, I go home, I sit here, I watch stuff, I read stuff, I listen to stuff. So that way I know what I'm talking about. So I would like to be informative to all of those is that because some of you out there have a life, although if you are watching this right now, I may do question if you have a life, but because I do not have a life, let me take what I've committed my life to, which is acquiring knowledge, and then I can share it with you. And if you disagree with this and if you want to discuss it, not argue, big difference. Discussions are great, arguments not so much. Maybe we can have you on. Maybe we could have a great time to discuss this. Maybe you could change my mind. If you are a jerk off, usually that's not going to happen. But anyways, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to leave any comments. Please like, subscribe. As the baseball season gets going on, I will have more to talk about. As I said, I'm going to demand your time. I want it to be that I at least know what I'm talking about. So baseball is what I know best. I would like to maybe have one day a week where I do a live streaming show where it's me being a degenerate in my space here while I'm watching baseball and commenting on it. And maybe once a week where I do recorded segments like this, which feature a topic of the week. And it would be great to have some people on because I'll tell you what, it is really tough being a one-man show, just looking at yourself and recording, which is why there's going to be a couple awkward pauses on here. But thank you if you stuck this out. I do appreciate it. And let's give it a week's time and see what we have to report. But wild times indeed in 2024. Thank you for listening. Have a nice day.